remember dying here? You will. What are you? Plenty more where that came from. Face your destruction. Be no more. No! Impossible!
Hey everyone, in today's content we're still stuck in the tutorial, but that is not gonna stop us from blasting. And boy do we blast. This is a Vaal Lightning Strike Raider, and while the whole concept of blasting, trademark, is kind of normie stuff nowadays, I promise you that this character is really not that generic. To begin with, I am not using crystallized Omniscience, even though I already got one to drop, which I think I'll use in another character soon, maybe, we'll see. Anyways, this character is also using a dagger instead of a claw, mainly because I recombinated my way into a relatively decent one for quote-unquote cheap. And finally, the skill setup is gonna be localized in the gloves, which is gonna enable some very funky stuff as you'll see in a bit. Having said this, I built the character with the goal of mapping fast, mainly because I wanted to run as many Exarch invitations to earn that godforsaken amulet. I really wasn't expecting amazing single target, especially since I spent a good chunk of my time using Ancestral Call in the setup. Eventually, I realized that Ancestral Call is kinda irrelevant when you can anoint Tribal Fury, and with that done, this allowed the character to hit a little bit harder, at the expense of some clear speed. But it's okay because at the end of the day the goal was being fast. Nuking regular content was just the cherry on top. Now, I point all of this out with Ancestral Call and Tribal Fury because extra strikes against nearby enemies are very important to the whole concept of blasting, because strike skills as a whole can cheese their damage by hitting enemies twice thanks to these additional strikes. What I mean by this is that by positioning yourself a bit far from the target, as in not right up in their face, the extra strike moth thing will hit with the melee portion and you yourself will hit the enemy with the projectiles. However, this extra strike conundrum is something my character will lack in comparison to the quote-unquote normal version, where the gloves enable multiple strikes against nearby enemies thanks to Eldritch Implicits or heck even Hunter influence. While Tribal Fury kinda circumvents that problem, you really cannot compare the clear speed. This build is really fast, but in no way, shape or form equally as fast or strong as the normie version, so do keep that in mind. Though I gotta admit that if you can cram crystallized Omniscience into this character, you'll have a much smoother experience, but at that point you're better off doing the champion version like everyone else. Really, this build is more of a hipster take at the concept rather than a sleeper version of the build, but I leave that train of thought / judgment to you. Anyways, with all of that said, let's talk about putting one of these together so that you too can enjoy the blasting gameplay that is hot amongst the epic gamers of Path of Exile today. Also subscribe or something. Anyways, build time. Alright then, first things first, the weapon. I went full hipster with this one and decided to use a dagger I made by using recombinators. Unfortunately, I lost footage of this craft, so you'll have to trust me when I say that I recombinated 2 fractured daggers and then spam deafening essences of anger until I hit this dagger. Next, I crafted suffixes cannot be changed, rolled a Veil Chaos Orb on it, hit the double damage while focused, and crafted the hybrid crit chance and attributes, and to wrap it up a Harvest Enchant for attack speed per quality. And I know it is not the hottest one-handed weapon ever, and to be quite honest you're also better off with a claw, but if you're like me and spending more than 15 exiles on an item gives you anxiety, crafting something like this dagger seemed reasonable, or at least I think it was. Well, as long as recombinators exist, right? Anyways, moving on to the place where we socket the setup, aka the gloves. Now for this I do have footage. We are gonna recombine Socketed Gems have 3.5 crit chance from the Essences of Horror on gloves. Alongside, Socketed attacks have crit multi and Socketed attacks are supported by faster attacks, which come from Elder Influence. And then, to top them off, we need to unveil +2 levels of Socketed melee or projectile gems and craft whichever mod wasn't unveiled, meaning that we want +3 levels of Socketed gems in these gloves. And I know that this is kinda weird, especially for this precise slot since you're gonna lose out on the strike skills target 2 additional targets Eldritch Implicit, but through Tribal Fury as an anoint on the amulet, we kinda evade this quality of life and DPS loss. Though if you want to use regular gloves and socket the setup on the body, go ahead. And we're also gonna use a level 21 and 20 quality Vaal Lightning Strike, so get to grinding incursions and hopefully you'll hit the corruption in a couple runs. Anyways, coming back to the gear, the shield is next. A Crusader Buckler with Socketed Gems have 30% increased mana reservation efficiency, alongside life and resistances. and if possible an added elemental damage craft. We are gonna socket some of the auras on this slot, as you are seeing on your screen right now. To further help the mana reservation costs, the helmet needs to be crafted by spamming deafening essences of loathing until we hit life alongside resists or accuracy. We also need increased mana reservation efficiency of Eater of Worlds as an implicit, as high as possible. And of course, Lightning Strike pierces 3 additional targets to further enhance the blasting, trademark, experience. Moving on, let's talk about the body armor, and this is where things get a bit interesting. We are building this character to cap spell suppression and also avoid elemental ailments without using purity of elements, so our body armor has to be thick in both of these regards. Alongside those we want life, resistances and whatever eldritch implicits you want. I've got crit multi and evasion, but again up to you. Next are the boots. Again, we still need some elemental ailment avoidance and we are gonna get it through eldritch implicits. And the rest of the modifiers in these boots are simple. Life, resistances, movement speed and if possible the elemental penetration enchantment, or at least the added lightning damage if you haven't killed recently. Now let's talk about jewelry. The amulet is another recombulated mess, that to be honest is not even that good. I recombinated Fractured Life with crit multi, and then spammed essences of loathing until I hit a resist and some form of elemental damage, alongside an open prefix, where I crafted negative mana cost of non-channeling skills. And then I anointed Tribal Fury. It is an okay amulet, it definitely could have been way better, but for now it's good enough. Anyways, now come the rings, the first of which was recombinated. I've got a minimum power charge, negative mana cost from an Elrenon Veil, accuracy, damage and resistances, and to wrap it up I crafted life on it. It's kinda nuts, but it could have been way cheaper if I wasn't hunting chaos resistance. And this is gonna be a trend with a lot of my gear nowadays, where I keep trying to cram chaos resistance into it and I just make things harder for myself. Anyways, the other ring is not recombinated, but it's also quite thick. Life, Unveiled Strength and Intelligence, Unveiled Added Elemental Damage, a minimum power charge craft, and to wrap it up and send it flying, a Redeemer Exalt Slam for the added cold damage against chilled enemies. No comment here, this one is filthy good, but remember, for every good Conqueror Exalt Slam there is one that is absolute cringe. Lastly, for the gear portion, a heavy belt with life, resists, elemental damage with attack skills, and another Redeemer Exalt Slam for the damage with hits and ailments against chilled enemies. Nothing fancy, right? Finally, for flasks I am using a Steve Knight, Wise Oak, and as of recently, a Bottled Faith. This last one wasn't even part of my original plan. I ran my first Cortex of the league and got the flask, so I figured might as well, right? Anyways, the Wise Oak requires triple balance for resistances, which I do have, so that justifies using it. But if you cannot get or use these two flasks, a regular sulfur and a diamond flask do wonders as well. And with that said, that is it for the gear, which is kinda nuts actually. Though with all honesty, my biggest challenges were the gloves, the weapon, figuring out the mana reservation shenanigans, and to top all of it, cramming chaos resistance into everything that had a quote-unquote suffix available. Once I got those covered, it was smooth sailing from there. It was kinda difficult, but the end product deserves the time investment, or at least I think so. Anyways, with all of that said, let's talk about the skill tree. So this is a level 97 Raider, but level 96 should be the goal, at least to socket one final jewel. We do not side with any bandit whatsoever, and for the Ascendancy I took Way of the Poacher, Quartz Infusion, Avatar of the Veil and Avatar of the Slaughtered, in that order. As for the skill tree itself, first we are gonna rush towards some mana reservation efficiency, life, a grace reservation mastery, and attack elemental penetration alongside a non-damaging ailment mastery. Once we are done there, we gotta rush towards the shadow area, going through the spell suppression into life as I push to grab the dagger notes and the elusive / dagger stuff. Once we have those, we push towards the duelist area, grabbing any life, spell suppression, crit stuff and point blank. In the duelist area, we are gonna take some damage while holding a shield, life and by this point the frenzy charge. This also means that we are gonna backtrack and grab the other frenzy charges. And while we are at it, also grab some jewel sockets. Starting with the large cluster jewel between Shadow and Ranger. This is an 8 passive chunker, with Advanced Guard, Feed the Fury and Martial Prowess. We take all the notables in this jewel. For the rest of the jewels I have increased maximum life, alongside resistances, crit multi and either damage, crit chance or attack speed. We are gonna use 7 jewels, so expect to spend some currency on them, especially since we mostly want 4 modifier jewels. But that should be it for the skill tree. It requires a bit of traveling, but I think that it makes enough sense. Through the route I took, the Ascendancy and the gear, we should be immune to elemental ailments, cap spell suppression and also cram the aura gems into the character without much hassle. So with all of that said, let's wrap up this amazing journey. It truly was amazing actually. This lightning strike fever is kinda contagious, but that's okay because the build ended up being so much fun. I swear you'll have a hard time playing anything else. And this happens to be my problem with the next character. I am not gonna spoil anything beyond the fact that it involves crystallized Omniscience, but I generally keep getting the itch to blast. And this is so funny to me because if I recall correctly, Lightning Strike wasn't that hot in the past. The first time I heard the skill making rounds was in Ultimatum, and that involved the gauntlets that never dropped. That also got nerfed to oblivion once the league ended. At the same time, I remember trying to do something with this skill way back when I started in Prophecy. I thought that the skill was neat, but the damage wasn't very hot. And in contrast, nowadays it deletes entire screens and it melts bosses in seconds. And now I find that kinda scary, because now I fear that Lightning Strike of all things in this game is gonna get nuked come next league. Of course, that is if there's a major balance patch, which I'm guessing there's gonna be because we are 3 patches back to back with little to no shakeup. Though, if you think about it, this is what enabled Lightning Strike to be the absolute meme that it is today. But on the other hand, I'm also happy about this character because the build is way too addicting. It's like the monkey neuron activation meme. You enter a map, you blast, loot drop, dopamine hit, rinse and repeat. But to actually wrap up whatever this ended up being, I got to hipster with it. A dagger, a glove setup, no epic meme amulet with 2% or less drop chance, etc. This forced me to min-max the absolute crap out of it, and yet I feel accomplished where I wrap up this adventure. The damage ended up being quite respectable, the mapping speed is also really fast, and that enabled me to chain Exarch invitations, which, as I stated previously, was part of the goal behind making this character. But she also did quite nicely tackling the tutorial bosses. I don't know, I am genuinely happy with this character. So I guess that's where we are wrapping things today. I've got a few ideas left for this league before jumping ship, so we'll see where the wind takes us. Thank you so much for watching the video. Subscribe, and until next time, peace out.